Hi, good evening, everyone. Um, Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're working today. Welcome to the Tilleke Gibbins webinar this evening on telemedicine here in 3 of our jurisdictions in Southeast Asia. I'm Alan Adcock, a partner in the Intellectual Property and Regulatory Affairs team sitting here in the Bangkok office. This evening, we're joined by 3 of our regulatory affairs specialists across 3 of our jurisdictions: Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. In Thailand, we have a consultant in our regulatory affairs group, Ms. Kitia Noparat Rumrod. Kitia is also a Thai licensed pharmacist. She's going to be joined by Ms. Hien Titu Vu, the head of regulatory affairs and the manager of our legal division of the patent department in our Vietnam office. And this evening, Hien is sitting up north in the Hanoi office. Like Kitia, Hien is also a Vietnamese licensed pharmacist. And lastly, this evening, to speak on Indonesia, the telemedicine, legal and regulatory affairs overview in that jurisdiction, we have Irene Jalim. Irene is a manager of our regulatory affairs in our Jakarta, Indonesia office, and also an important member of our patents team there. Tilleke Gibbins is a full-service general practice law firm practicing here in Southeast Asia. Our offices are in Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. And this evening, we're going to be speaking about Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. In Thailand, we are the country's oldest and largest law firm, over 133 years of continuous practice. In Vietnam, we're also the first, the oldest, and the largest international law firm in Vietnam, with offices both in the north, where Ms. Hien is sitting this evening, and in the south, Ho Chi Minh. In 2013, we expanded our Southeast Asia regional presence with offices in Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. Tilleke Gibbins, we're generally recognized by global rankings and peers as the premier law firm for doing business here in Southeast Asia. As I said, we're a full-service general practice law firm for top investors and high-growth companies here in this region. We have over 200 lawyers practicing in Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand. Our firm focuses on client commercial success, and this is very important in this increasingly important and developing part of the world. We pride ourselves on local knowledge of law, regulation, and practice, and that really drives our commitment to extraordinary client service. As a full-service general practice law firm, we have many different sort of areas of specialization, but for purposes of this evening's discussion on telemedicine and digital health here in Southeast Asia, we're really going to focus on regulatory affairs and intellectual property. And all 3 of tonight's specialists are also going to be giving a brief introduction to data protection and privacy implications as these relate to telemedicine in Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Of course, we're more than just here in Southeast Asia. We're members of 2 leading global independent law firm associations, Lex Mundi and Multilaw. That helps us to reach out to lawyers and specialist consultants all over the world in over 180 jurisdictions. So with that, we'll ask Kitia to go ahead and present on telemedicine and digital health overview.
Yeah, thanks again for your kind introduction, Alan. And welcome again to our webinar. My name is Kitia. I will handle the telemedicine in Thailand. And in my session, I will begin with the national overview so that everyone understands that how telemedicine has developed in Thailand. And after that, I will talk about the regulations and some requirements related to the data privacy in telemedicine. And in the end, I will tell you about the future trend and challenge for providing the telemedicine in Thailand. So let's get started with the Thailand overview. In Thailand, Ministry of Public Health is the main organization that promoting the digital health technology. Ministry of Public Health has set up a so-called e-health strategy, which is a 10-year plan starting from 2017 to 2026. The main goals of the e-health strategy is to improve the access to the medical care in Thailand and to link the medical service with the digital technology. Actually, the telemedicine is one of the main goals that has been included into the e-health strategy. And before 2020, in Thailand, there is no specific law that govern the telemedicine here in Thailand, meaning that during that time, the company or other service provider can provide the telemedicine service without having to comply with any regulation in Thailand. However, in 2020, Medical Council of Thailand is the first organization that published a notification to govern the doctor who will engage in the telemedicine services. After that, the Pharmacy Council and Medical Technology Council has also published the notification to allow the practice of telepharmacy service and telemedical lab in Thailand. And in 2021, the Ministry of Public Health has started to publish the notification to govern the hospital and clinic who would like to provide the telemedicine service in Thailand. After that, the Nursing and Midwifery Council and Physical Therapy Council has published a notification to allow the telenursing and telerehabilitation service in Thailand. So now you can see how the telemedicine has developed in Thailand. And here is the examples of the telemedicine application that are available in Thailand. Among these applications, I would like to share with you about the background of an application called Spring Up application, because this application is the pilot projects that run by public sector and private sector. For the public sector, the main organization that handle is the National Health Security Office, or NHSO. And for the private sector, the main organization that engage in Spring Up is the Good Doctor. Good Doctor is a health tech company that is well known for being a platform provider in Southeast Asia. And Spring Up application, it will be applicable for the patient who has test positive for COVID-19. So once the patient has tested positive for COVID-19, they can access to this application for free, and they can get connected with a doctor and obtain the medicine from pharmacy store that are partnered with the NHSO. Now, there are over 400 pharmacy store that has been partnered with the NHSO. And here is all for the examples of the application. So now let's moving on to the regulation of the telemedicines. Like I mentioned earlier, that in Thailand, there are two main notifications that govern the telemedicine service in Thailand. The first one is a notification issued by the Ministry of Public Health, and another one is a notification from Medical Council of Thailand. According to these two notifications, I would like to point out the general regulatory requirements for telemedicine, which including that the telemedicine service must be operated through the hospitals or clinic that has obtained the license to operate a medical facility in Thailand. And another thing that you should be note is the physician-to-physician consultations, or so-called like a consultation between doctor. They are not under the scope of telemedicine, meaning that this kind of service are not regulated under Thai law. So as a platform provider, whether based in Thailand or outside Thailand, you can freely provide the consultation services among the doctor without having to comply with the law. Then let's take a look at the governing authority and approval requirements. It would be different depending on the type of hospital that provide the telemedicine services. For telemedicine service rendered by the private clinic or private hospital, it will be mainly governed by the Departments of Health and Support Service, or the OSSS. However, there will be a specific requirement that the pre-approval from the OSSS is a mandatory requirement. For the telemedicine rendered by public hospital, for this case, it will be governed by the Ministry of Public Health. However, unlike the telemedicine service rendered by private clinic or private hospital, in this case, there will be no pre-approval requirement from the government authority. Then to be more specific, let's take a look at the requirements that are applied to hospitals or clinic. As I mentioned earlier, that before providing the telemedicine services, the hospital must obtain the prior approval from the DOSSS. In this case, the hospital must submit an application to include the telemedicine service into their hospital operations. And another requirement is that the platform itself must be able to verify and identities of doctor and patients. What more, it might be equipped with the system for patient registrations and health data records as well. Regarding the SOP that should be in place, it should be cover the service operations, communication failure management, and security information. As for the requirement for the healthcare professional, actually there is no requirements that require the healthcare professional to be trained to provide the telemedicine service, but the healthcare professional must hold a degree that's specific to his or her medical expertise and obtain the license from relevant council in Thailand. For example, if you are the doctor, then you need to obtain the license from the Medical Council of Thailand. And as for the doctor, you must be aware that not every conditions or not every disease can be treated with the telemedicine. So the patient need to be properly informed about the scope of the service and the limitations of the service you will be providing. Okay, so now let's moving on to the requirement that are related to the data privacy. According to the telemedicine regulation, you will see that actually there is no specific requirements on the rule for security system. The regulation only require that the telemedicine system must be secure in accordance with Personal Data Protection Act or PDPA, which has become effective in June last year. And another requirement is that the patient consent must be obtained prior to provide the service, meaning that if you provide the service for the Thai people, in this case, the patient consent must be in Thai, okay? And when take a look at the PDPA and telemedicine regulation, you will see that they only require the service provider or the hospital to provide an appropriate security measure for preventing an unauthorized disclosure or unauthorized collections or unauthorized use of the personal data. So due to the tight timeline for today's presentation, I will not go into the details of the PDPA requirement, but I will only share just the general requirement of the PDPA with you. The first one that you should be aware of is that PDPA will be applied both territorial and extraterritorial. So meaning that if you are the data controller based outside Thailand, you will be also required to comply with these local regulations. And there will be some requirement in the PDPA stating that the data controller outside Thailand has to appoint the local representative to act on behalf of them as well. As for the cross-border data transfer, it is permissible under the Thai law if the destination country has adequate data protection standard. And that is all for the data privacy in telemedicine. And here's come to the last topic of my presentation. I will talk about the future trends and the challenge for providing telemedicine in Thailand. Here in Thailand, we believe that there will be a trend for using telemedicine because Thailand, we are well positioned for the telemedicine services. This is because in Thailand, we quite have a large number of population. Now we have approximately 70 million people here in Thailand. And Thailand is the first country in Southeast Asia that has implemented the universal healthcare coverage in 2002. On top of that, we have high qualities of healthcare. We have more than 1,000 hospitals, which majority of them are public hospitals. So meaning that the healthcare system in Thailand or healthcare service in Thailand are equally distributed throughout the country. So with all of this reason, we believe that Thailand are more than ready for telemedicine, and there will be a lot of room for telemedicine business here in Thailand. When take a look at patient privacy and data protection, you will see that there might be some challenge when you handle a lot of health digital data. So in the future, the software and AI will play an important role in the management of digital health data in Thailand. Similarly, there will be a trend for using medical device and AI in telemedicine as well. So as a service provider, you need to ensure the compliance with the increasing law and regulations of digital health and medical device in Thailand. You may need to assess whether your medical device, whether your products are considered as a medical device, and you should learn more about the product registration requirements. And the last thing that it might be some challenge for this business is when you are promoting your platform, because promoting your platform may be deemed as advertising of Medical Facility Act, which require pre-approval from DDO SSS. And it should be noted also that advertising in relation to drug via the platform should be avoided, because not all drug can be advertised directly to the general public. And yeah, that is all for the overview for Thailand. And in the next section, my colleague Ms. Hien, she will cover the telemedicine in Vietnam. So over to you, Ms. Hien.
Yeah, thank you for coming here, and let me have a chance to introduce with you about my topic today, a look at telemedicine in Vietnam. Yeah, first of all, let me start by give you an overview about telemedicine in Vietnam. Yeah, and we have some interesting number here. The telemedicine in Vietnam was firstly implemented in 2003 with a great support from the Australia expert. And then since the years of 2010, we have some trial study on telemedicine applied in Vietnamese village. And from 2017, we saw a first telemedicine companies in Vietnam was set up. The company was invested by a Singapore group with a medical group in Vietnam to develop a telemedicine service. And also from 2017, a startup in Vietnam cooperated with Microsoft to provide some smart medical service to hospitals in Huế, Ho Chi Minh City, and Hanoi in Vietnam. Yeah. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we noticed many efforts from the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Information and Communication in Vietnam, and with many telemedicine projects has been tested and implemented in Vietnam. For example, a Central Lung Hospital in Hanoi, Vietnam, used video telephony to examine their patients through a smartphone application. And another example is Hanoi Medical University Hospital. They introduced a digital hospital to replace a face-to-face communication between the doctor and patient and doctor and doctor. And only in 2 months of implementation, the Hanoi Medical University Hospital held telemedicine session with the other medical facility, and among them there was one clinic in Cambodia. And in early 2021, there was 26 hospitals have telemedicine system in Vietnam, and the system connected to more than 1,000 lower level hospitals. Now we will moving on to the Vietnamese legal framework for telemedicine. Yeah, the main authority managing for telemedicine in Vietnam is Ministry of Health. You can call briefly MOH. However, the MOS only set out the regulatory guidance or management of the telemedicine in activity. They do not issue, they does not issue any license or approval for telemedicine activity in Vietnam. Instead, the health facility, including the hospital or clinic, need to report their telemedicine service to the supervisor authority, such as MOS or the provincial health departments. During the management of telemedicine, the MOS may work with other authorities. For example, they can work with the Ministry of Information and Communication regarding the issue such as network security. Yeah. Now we will move on some regulation governing the telemedicine in Vietnam. Now we had about 8 legal pieces directly governs the telemedicine activity. You can see several circular and some decisions issued by the MOS in Vietnam. In addition, the telemedicine also stipulated by the broader regulatory list of pieces on medical profession in general. For example, the law on medical examination and treatment and its bylaw. And it's to note that Vietnam have launched a new law on medical examination and treatment. And this is the first time that telemedicine is mentioned in the law, in this law. Furthermore, the telemedicine also may relate to the other regulations such as information security or IP. Yeah. The next part, I would like to introduce about the requirement applicable to the healthcare professional and the telemedicine service. Telemedicine is defined in Vietnam as an activity of exchange of information relating to patient health between patient and healthcare professional or between healthcare professional in distant site through the use of information technology. So in Vietnam, the telemedicine is provided on the rule of voluntary participation and can happen can occur between the doctor and the patient and doctor. And now the MOS give a list of temporary telemedicine allowed in Vietnam, and such we can see 6 types of telemedicine, such as teleconsultant, telesurgery, telediagnostic. Yeah. And there are many specific requirements applied for the telemedicine platforms in Vietnam, such as the requirement regarding the network system, the requirement for database workstation, the software security, data security, and internet speed. For example, the data recording system of the telemedicine must have a minimum storage capacity of 10 years. And internet speed for telemedicine must be new transmission while the host of telemedicine session. Yeah. Now we will move a main part. In very important part is the data privacy aspect in telemedicine. For the hospital and clinic, there are some specific provisions for director, such as the director of hospital or clinic conducting the telemedicine activity must strictly manage IT device. Yeah, they do not allow any movement or change location of the IT device without specific permission, and they need to assign some certain and suitable user to access the software and database, and they need to set up the protection way, such as using the firewall system. And briefly, they need to apply any necessary measurement to prevent or detect any early unauthorized access. Then not only director, all the medical staff have their responsibility regarding the telemedicine activity, such as they need to strictly comply with the internal regulation of their clinic or hospital, and they must be responsible for keeping confidential and not sharing the information about the patient or the doctor in telemedicine consultant. Yeah, for other party relating to telemedicine, such as the IT platform provider, that they also have their own responsibility, including that they need to set up a software system and database, having a backup mechanism must to ensure that the data can be ready to recover in any emergency networks incident. And they need to take their own responsibility before the law in case of self-disclosure of personal information. They are not allowed to use any image or data stores in the telemedicine session for any commercial purpose. And now we would like to talk about the transfer of health data overseas. In Vietnam, the health data can be shared with a third party, either in Vietnam or overseas, provided that the consent of the patient is obtained. In general, Vietnam doesn't separate the general data or the sensitive data, so all types of personal data are treated as the same, with the key rule that the data subject, in this case, means the patient, must be notified and must consent to any data processing, and actively the use of the data must be in line with the purpose as notified and consented to the patient. I would like to share an important information that Vietnam is drafting a decree on personal data protection. The drafting starts from more than 2 years ago, and there are many discussions on the decree, because the decree is centralized on the provision regarding the data protection in the many legal piece, and the decree will relate on the many activity like e-commerce, like the clinical trial, like the telemedicine. And within the scope of this presentation, I only focus on the 5 cases where the personal data can be processed without the patient consent. The first case is to protect the life and health of the patient or other in an emergency situation. And the second case is that where the data disclosed is mentioned in with the law. The next case is when the authority may process the data in case of emergency of national defense, national security, or epidemic, also in accordance with the law. The next case is to perform a contract between the data subject and the relevant party in accordance with the law. And the last case is to serve the activity of the government agency, also in accordance with the law. So the last part I would like to say today is the future of telemedicine in Vietnam. So similar to Thailand, Vietnam is in a very good position for telemedicine. We have a high proportion of young population from 19 to 79 years old. So the young people can easy to access and use new communication technology. And we also noted a good education level of Vietnamese people. Vietnam also have a good information technology foundation. We have a high rate of people using smartphone, internet, 4G and 5G network. And recently, Ministry of Health focused on providing policy and fund for the a very good project, namely telemedicine for the period from 2020 to 2021. And the project includes many activities for telemedicine like training, technology transfer, and professional healthcare. And another project, a big project that is develop a doctor for every home software in 10 provinces in Vietnam. The project worth $3.2 million and supported by current government. And recently, the MOS have approved the Health Digital Transformation Program to 2025 with the orientation to the 2030 to promote the application of digital science and technology in health activity in Vietnam. Yeah, from all of this point, we see that the telemedicine is have a fast growing in Vietnam, and telemedicine also have many big benefits, such as developing telemedicine is current one of the top missions in the Vietnam health industry. And telemedicine will help to increase the health access for people, especially people in rural or remote areas in Vietnam. And telemedicine also have to improve the quality of healthcare service, especially for the management or cure the chronic disease in Vietnam. And it also is a way to save time and cost for patients, because the patient do not need to go to the hospital and clinic and waste a lot of time to wait to get a number for a doctor consultant. And no need to pay the travel cost because they can use telemedicine service anytime and anywhere. And telemedicine also have to avoid many paper administrative procedures in Vietnam. And another factor that telemedicine also have to overcome the situation that the patient has a disease but is afraid to go to the doctor, especially in the sensitive condition. Briefly, I believe that the telemedicine will have a bright outlook for Vietnam. And I will now finish my presentation today. And now I would like to welcome my colleagues from Indonesia, Mr. Iron, to talk about the telemedicine in Indonesia. Iron, please.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kitia and Ms. Hien, for your presentations on telemedicine in Thailand and Vietnam. Hello, everyone. My name is Irene. I am the Manager of Regulatory Affairs in Tilleke Gibbins Indonesia office. The regulatory framework on telemedicine in Indonesia is still limited and not as extensive as that in Thailand and Vietnam. So let's take a look on the overview on telemedicine in Indonesia. The similar outline as the presentations for Thailand and Vietnam. The first one will go over the national overview of telemedicine in Indonesia. And then we move over to the regulatory framework and data privacy related to telemedicine. And lastly, the future trends and challenges. The Indonesian Ministry of Health has acknowledged telemedicine as one of the e-health strategies to resolve the infrastructure, communication, and human resources issues under its regulation number 46 of 2017 on national e-health strategies. Telemedicine is one of the priorities of health technology transformation under the blueprint of digital health transformation strategy issued by the Ministry of Health in 2021, which was driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. And based on the blueprint of the digital health transformation strategy, it includes health data integration and development that is aimed to improve the quality of health policies based on accurate, up-to-date, and complete data, health service application integration and development that is aimed to develop integrated health applications, improving health human resource with health informatics skills, and establishing a centralized help desk at the Ministry of Health. Health technology ecosystem development, namely telemedicine technology expansion, development of health technology innovation product ecosystems, and health biotechnology research integration. Its output is to create collaboration and an ecosystem of digital health innovations between governments, universities, industry, and the general public. These are some of the current telemedicine services in Indonesia. HelloDoc and AlloDoctor are the two top telemedicine services in Indonesia. They were established around 2014, and the other one, AlloDoctor, was established in around 2016. Good Doctor is also a telemedicine service in Indonesia. There are some dedicated telemedicine services for mental health, such as Calm and Relief. The regulatory framework on telemedicine. The first one is the Minister of Health Regulation number 20, issued in 2019. This regulation only regulates the organization of telemedicine services among health service facilities. This regulation does not set out the implementation of telemedicine between health service facilities or healthcare professionals and the telemedicine users. The teleservices allowed under this regulation are such as teleradiology, teleelectrocardiography, teleultrasonography, teleconsultancy, and other telemedicine consultancy services according to developments in science and technology. Telemedicine services are provided between health service facilities to support diagnosis, therapy, and/or prevention of diseases. Health service facilities include government and privately owned hospitals, health service facilities which request consultations, which include frontline health service facilities such as public health centers. Telemedicine does not cover health consultancy services provided through websites and phone apps to patients. And also under this regulation, telemedicine services are to be provided by healthcare professionals who hold a license to practice in the organizing health service facilities. The next regulation on telemedicine is the Medical Council Regulation number 74, issued in 2020. This regulation was issued as one of the measures to prevent the COVID-19 disease. It allows telemedicine to be between healthcare professionals and patients. Telemedicine constitutes a consultancy service provided by the doctors by implementing confidentiality principle of the patients. Application-based health consultancy services and health consultancy services by phone for doctor patients is covered by this regulation. However, the provision of consultancy must be through or managed by the health service facilities. Telemedicine services may be provided in online writing, voice, and/or videos directly to obtain the information required to support diagnosis, as well as patient management and treatment in accordance with the prevailing laws and regulations. Doctors and dentists who provide medical services through telemedicine must be registered and have a license to practice in the relevant health service facilities. The Next regulation that is related to telemedicine is the MOH regulation number 24, which was just issued last year regarding medical records. In this regulation, health service facilities providing telemedicine services must provide, operate, or manage electronic medical records. Doctors and dentists providing telemedicine services must maintain medical records, either manual medical records in written form or electronic medical records in the form of transcripts for all patients, and store them in the relevant health service facilities. Next, regarding data privacy on telemedicine, Indonesia government issued a law on personal data protection just late last year. There are no specific provisions on telemedicine in this law. It states, however, that the treatment of personal data which are processed by either health service facilities or any telemedicine platform are subject to the provisions under the PDP law. It explicitly states that specific personal data includes health data and information. A patient's rights, according to this law, are, for example, to request information related to the clarity of their identity, the legal basis, the purpose and use of their personal data, as well as the accountability of any party who requests the data, to complete, renew, and amend any mistakes or inaccuracies in their data according to the purpose of the data processing, to access and obtain copies of their data, to terminate, erase, and destroy their data, to withdraw any consent to the processing of their data, to object to any act or decision-making process that is based on automatic processing, including profiling, to postpone or limit the processing of any data on a proportional basis according to the purpose of the data processing, to file a civil lawsuit and receive indemnities in relation to any violation of the confidentiality of their data, to obtain and use their data provided by a controller in commonly recognized forms and formats or in ways that can be read by electronic systems, and to use and submit their data to another controller. Looking at the future trends and challenges on telemedicine in Indonesia, this year, according to the roadmap of the MOH digital health transformation, the government is aiming on the implementation of health analysis system. So it is expected that there will be an increase in integrated data systems. This is realized by implementing an AI-based health analysis system. This implementation is marked by the expansion of licensing and implementation of biotechnology, innovation technology products at health facilities, improvement of telemedicine services at first-line healthcare facilities, and a policy on digital health. For next year, the Ministry of Health intends to expand the Indonesia's digital health transformation. So it is expected that next year, all regions in Indonesia are expected to have an integrated individual-based health data management, and 100% of healthcare facilities will have an integrated system. And next year, the focus is more on expanding the target of the previous year, which is a well-run digital transformation system integrating individual-based data, health application systems in health facilities, adequate health human resources with digital literacy, high number of biotechnology products applied in health facilities, and the expansion of telemedicine services at first-line healthcare facilities. Now, the main challenges, the first one is that more than 80% of healthcare facilities in Indonesia are currently untouched by digital technology. Now, this challenge is mainly due to Indonesia's geography, that it is an archipelagic nation with more than 13,000 islands and a population of over 270 million people. So most of the telemedicine service users are concentrated in big cities. And in remote areas, which actually constitute the majority of the country, they are still faced with challenges with internet access. The second one is that fragmented data, which are spread across hundreds of varying health sector applications, a lack of regulation in terms of standardization and data exchange, and an incomplete, inconsistent, and inaccurate data recording is the main factor affecting the quality of health services. And that would conclude my presentation for tonight. I'll hand it over back to you, Alan. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Kitia, Hien, and Irene, thank you all very much for that very good overview of telemedicine, digital health, data collection, data protection in Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. It's pretty encouraging to hear that at least several of our jurisdictions here in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia, this notion of digital health, telemedicine, it actually began here in this region even before the pandemic started at the beginning of 2020. We've just learned tonight that as early as in 2009 in Vietnam, a first mention of telemedicine in some Ministry of Public Health regulations, 2014 in Indonesia, and then Thailand's 2017 e-health strategy that was adopted by the government. I want to ask all of you, because in addition to being regulatory affairs and pharmaceutical specialists, you're also all intellectual property lawyers. So I want to ask you each a question about intellectual property implications for telemedicine and digital health in Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. But quickly before I do that, I want to ask Hien a question. Hien, you mentioned this Vietnam draft decree on data protection, and you gave us 5 examples of when subject data could be used or processed without express consent. Can you just tell us, when do you think that Vietnam draft decree on data protection, when is Tilleke Gibbins Vietnam expecting that to be published or to become effective? Oh, Hien, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you, Alan, for your question. Yeah, regarding the draft decree on personal data protection, we know that the National Assembly has held the 5th session on the February 2023 in the last month to discuss about the draft, and almost of them agree with the content of the draft. And maybe it is the final draft of the decree, and the attendee of the National Assembly meeting session suggests that the decree should be finalized and and come to effective in 1st July this year. Yeah,
Wow,
it's
okay.
all the information I got so far.
1st of July of 2023, and I'm sure Tilleke Gibbins Vietnam is going to update everyone through the client newsletter about that, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Hien. Kitia, quickly on Thailand, you mentioned this approval process, which is applied for and then granted by the Thailand Department of Health Services Support. Can you just walk the audience through that Thailand Department of Health Service Support application process to be an approved telemedicine service provider? And after you explain the process, just really quickly, I mean, will that particular Thai Department of Health Service Support, do they then like go and inspect that telemedicine company or consultancy after they've been granted a license? Explain,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the question. So regarding the procedure for obtaining the approval for providing telemedicine service in Thailand, kindly let me explain that it is the process that you submit the applications to amend the operation service for your hospital. So after you obtain the approval for this kind of amendments, then you can provide the telemedicine service to your patients. Regarding the procedure, you need to submit the application online, And then apart from the document verifications, the DOSSS will require you to perform the inspection. So a so-called like perform a test session to test how your system run and how you identify your patient and doctor. Yeah, and all of this they take around 1 to 2 months depending on the complexity of the case. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Very clear. All right, thank you, Kitia. Irene, a specific question to you, and we do have a couple questions in the Q&A box, and I'll get to those in just one second. Irene, for Indonesia, you in your presentation, you very helpfully introduced the 2019 telemedicine regulation. Do we expect that to carry on in effectiveness now that we're coming out of the pandemic, or is it time sensitive, and will the government promulgate some bridging legislation after the 2019 telemed regulation?
Yes, Alan. So the 2019 regulation, it only allows telemedicine services among healthcare facilities, but the other regulation issued by the Medical Council, that is the regulation that allows telemedicine services between doctors and patients. But that is the regulation that is time limited, meaning that in the regulation, it states that when the pandemic is declared to be over, then the regulation is no longer valid. So we expect that the government would issue more regulations on telemedicine, because it is, as we mentioned earlier, telemedicine is one of the priorities in the digital health strategies for Indonesia.
Okay, very clear. And I guess like Hien mentioned, for the Vietnam decree on data protection being written up and updated to everyone in the client newsletter, similarly for the Indonesia telemedicine regulation, that will also be in the client newsletter, correct?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Irene. We have a question for Vietnam from Van Do. And Hien, it's a question for Vietnam, but maybe Kitia can answer it for Thailand as well, since we do have universal medical scheme here in Thailand, the first in Southeast Asia. Hien and Kitia, the question from Van Do is telemedicine covered by social medical insurance? In other words, do telemedicine services, are they covered by the government hospital medical schemes in Vietnam and in Thailand?
Yeah, so for Vietnam, yeah, it can. Yeah, the telemedicine can be covered by the social medical insurance. Yeah.
For Thailand, not every telemedicine service are reimbursable under the universal social scheme in Thailand. As far as I'm concerned, just last year, telemedicine services can be reimbursable for like COVID-19 patients or the simple disease like diabetes or hypertension, but it will be limited to the person who live in Bangkok area only for Thailand. So I think there will be a lot of development for including the telemedicine service into the health benefit in Thailand.
Okay, thanks. Irene, we have a question for Indonesia from Radinsa Satria. And Radinsa's question for you, Irene, in Indonesia is, she wants to know, Radinsa wants to know about you raised the examples of two sort of telemedicine current Indonesian service providers, the company called Halodeck and Allo Doctor, as some of the biggest telemedicine platforms in Indonesia. The question is, are those two businesses considered healthcare facilities?
Okay, I think we go back to the regulatory framework. So I understand that the regulation on telemedicine that governs or that allows telemedicine services among healthcare facilities is the MOH regulation in 2019. But We have mentioned also there's an additional regulation issued by the Medical Council, and that was issued in 2020, driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. And that regulation actually allows doctor to patients consultancy services through telemedicine. So that regulation allows a licensed physician or a doctor in a healthcare facilities. So that is what the regulation allows in the Medical Council regulation.
The Medical Council regulation of 2020. All right.
That's right.
All right. Thank you very much, Irene. I did want to ask, because we're all IP specialists, I did want to ask this question about intellectual property implications within this new industry, telemedicine and digital health, just sort of generally. Can we make the general assumption that Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam provide for intellectual property protection for all of the infrastructure involved in telemedicine and digital health, everything from the software to the design patents around any wearable technology, or patents around any sort of medical devices in terms of their production or their use. Can we all assume that sort of traditional intellectual property notions of copyright, patent, design, trademark, and trade secret, these are all available to telemedicine and digital health businesses in Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand? Is that correct, or are there some limitations?
Yes, I would like to give the answer for Vietnam. Yeah. Regarding the IP aspect, I think that is similar to the traditional healthcare area. The IP protection regarding the telemedicine is widely spread from patent, copyright, trade secret, or industrial design, and yet Vietnam protect for owner the right. However, for telemedicine, it should note that the use of medical device, the use of medical claim or method of treatment are not protected as patents in Vietnam. And another important factor that in telemedicine, software is very important. So in general, a software can be only protected in form of copyright, but not patent in Vietnam. And however, a device containing the software still may be patented in Vietnam. And the topic on invention relating to software has been hot in Vietnam recently. And furthermore, due to the high technology nature of telemedicine activity, I think that there is much room for the improvement involved. So it may lead to the technology transfer issue during the telemedicine activities in not only in Vietnam. Yeah, it's my answer.
Irene, can I just ask maybe for Indonesia, patentability of software in Indonesia, yes or no?
It is possible, Alan. So software as a computer program is patentable, provided that it contains all the technical features that can solve a technical problem. And if it meets all the patentability requirement, all the novelty and inventive steps. So if an invention on computer program fulfills all that, it is patentable, yes. So the copyright protection applies to the computer program where it only contains source codes, as we know already. But it is possible for patent protection.
All right, Irene, very clear. Thanks for that. I know, at least in terms of Thailand, software is not subject to patent protection unless that software is attached to some sort of hardware which completes a function. With that, and it being now the top of the hour, we will finalize the presentation. So again, thank you very much. And please have a good rest of your evenings, mornings, or afternoons. Thanks, everyone. And thanks to our presenters as well. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.